IVM.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 15 of the Fighting G.O.A.T. My name is Arjun, aka Mystic Chipalkatti, along with my buddy, my partner, मेरा दोस्त और यार, the everlasting superhuman Somesh Kamra.
So many brand plugins, Everlast and this and that.
अरे करना पड़ता है यार, करना पड़ता है. It happens.
Good to hear you and see you, Mr. Chips. It's been a while.
Good to see you too. आपने camera change किया है क्या? Because it's looking a little crisper. It's looking a little better.
Yeah,
Have you upgraded it to a MacBook Pro by any chance? Apple products?
Unlike the UFC fighter pay scale, IVM has given me a raise, so I've got a new laptop.
Fantastic. And we're about to start. But before we get started, what a week we had. We had a great week in terms of mixed martial arts and boxing. Well, a lot of people have have had their reservations about the fight between Mayweather and Logan Paul, but I'm waiting to hear what Mr. Kamra has to say.
Well, I'm never, ever a fan of these exhibition matches. I feel a fight is a fight. If it's a fight, if it's not a fight, then I'm sorry, I'm not going to tune in. I've just seen or read the highlights of it and just read a little bit about this. It hasn't impressed me, but at the same time, it has ruffled a lot of feathers in the MMA world.
It has tremendously.
What can we do about that?
I mean, it's funny of how, the Paul brothers that they've come in, both Logan and Jake Paul. Jake Paul fought against Ben Askren 2 months ago, and now Logan Paul fought against and you know what the funny thing was, what even in an exhibition these guys were going at each other. I watched the fight from top to bottom, and it's Mayweather's a 50-0 undefeated champion, but you could see the age on him, and then at the same time you could see Logan.
He's 44 years old now.
Yeah, he's 44, man. I mean, he's out of his fighting prime, and the last time he fought was Conor McGregor, which was like 5 years ago. I think they fought in 2016, right? And
yeah, that's right.
And then you could see the difference because Mayweather had slowed down a little bit, understandably so.
Right.
But he still looked good. He was still slipping and moving, and he evaded. I don't think he ever got hit. And but the point is that it's. I can understand the frustration, But this is Somesh. This is a subject that we're going to get into in depth later.
Yes, I coaxed you into it, right?
I know you did. No, we'll get into it later. But it was a fight. It was a fight. It had a great undercard. We saw some other great fights. But that was the boxing for the week. But let's quickly go over to the MMA for the week, Somesh.
Man, see, it was a great card. In fact, we were
a lot of sleepers, though. Huh? It was it was not a star-studded card, apart from say Biggie Boy, Jairzinho, Rozenstruik, but it was a bit of a sleeper. Like there was a lot of good fights anyway.
Well, Santiago put up a great performance out there.
I
really liked the way he was moving, and in fact, I felt he was holding himself back, and because he's coming back after like an extended break, I was beginning to believe he's just having fun out there, and he wanted to go the distance. He may have been able to finish it, but I guess he just held on to his guns, and he just kind of didn't go all guns blazing on this front. But that was a good fight for me. The co-main event, Marcin Tybura and Walt Harris, was a brilliant back and forth. Marcin Tybura, who was hurt very, very early in the fight, and we know what Walt Harris can do. But man, Walt Harris just could not keep it together. He could not keep it together.
It's been a problem for him in the last 2 fights as well. Like if you saw his fight against Alistair Overeem, he had Overeem hurt in the first 1 minute of the fight. But then, Overeem being the crafty veteran, waited for him to gas out. And we saw the same thing with Tybura. Marcin Tybura did the same thing. He took the shots, took Walt Harris's best shots. And then later, Walt, the minute it went to the ground, Walt looked like a fish out of the water.
But, Chips, the thing is that I personally believe it's not a skill issue. It is more of a will issue. And especially
mindset,
after, especially after the unfortunate death of his daughter in 2019.
Disappearance. She was, I think it was disappearance also, right? She was disappeared and she was found dead.
She got exactly, and she was found dead.
That is horrible.
I just wished it doesn't happen to anybody in the world.
Nobody.
And it was a different Walt Harris when he came back to the octagon because he took some time off. He spoke to Dana White. He came back to the octagon.
In fact, Somesh, correct me if I'm wrong. Dana White helped him so much. The UFC helped him so much during that investigation. Where they lent resources, and Dana actually came out and said that we will do anything to help this man out.
Right. And I think they raised about $100,000 also via the UFC.
That's crazy.
I'm not sure. I think it was Junior Dos Santos or it was Alistair Overeem. One of them had kind of connected a foundation and said, why don't we
think might be Overeem. I think
why don't we help find his daughter? But unfortunately, she was found murdered, I think about 10 or 15 days after disappearance. And ever since he's come back to the octagon, he's never been the same. He's been on 3 losses. And after a while, I just begin to feel that the motivation to be there is not there anymore. And
we've talked about motivation with fighters, and we've talked about them coming back with the wrong mindset. And nobody can blame Walt Harris. Man, he's been through something more that most people will not recover from. Losing a loved one, losing a child is something that is horrible, and nobody should ever go through it. And I think maybe going to a camp, a mentally strong camp. I'm not saying every fighter is mentally strong, but you go work with a Cormier or a Khabib, man, they will shape you up in a very different way. They're some of the mentally strongest fighters I think we've seen, especially guys like Khabib and Islam Makhachev and all those guys, man. They're tough as nails.
But also I seriously believe that, when a fighter goes through an incident like this, I seriously believe that they need to change their city and have a completely new environment to forget everything that's happened and start off afresh. Because Walt Harris is based out of Alabama, and he's always been there. And after this incident, he goes back to the same gym. He goes back to the same coaches, goes back to the same environment. I think it's not working. And honestly, 3 back-to-back losses is a stain on his...
He should move to AKA. He should really do it.
Well, he needs to move somewhere for sure, because if he doesn't do that, maybe one more loss and he could be the next cut from the UFC.
Probably, because the UFC is pretty straightforward now. It's become a business, and it's they will just, if you're not performing, especially if you're a relative newcomer, it's not like, it's not like you're Donald Cerrone, who has, been around the company for 15 years.
Right.
And, and then you're given chance after chance, or even Silva, who was given chance after chance.
Well, and honestly, now you're a publicly listed company, so there's more pressure on actually showing profits.
Exactly.
So each one of the fighters is going to be treated as an asset, and if those guys don't show up, and if those guys don't put in their best foot forward, I think a lot of them are going to get cut.
I think, but who put his best foot forward? Biggie Boy himself. Oof. He came in and he put on a performance against Sakai, man. And right at the buzzer, 4:59, 4 minutes and 59 seconds of round number 1, that big overhand right came in and he closed the show.
Well, in fact, that overhand right was not even clean. It didn't even land. I personally felt it kind of scraped through the cage and it hit him. And just imagine the power in this guy.
The timing, man. And it's not his timing, it's his speed as well. He's pretty fast for a heavyweight.
He's huge. He's huge,
fast. He's not Fedor Emelianenko fast, but he's fast.
Right.
Fedor hit as fast as Aldo in the heavyweight division.
Right. But this guy who's got about 74, 75 professional kickboxing fights, I guess after a certain point, you expect his hands and legs to be very, very quick. But this guy from his, home gym has moved to American Top Team, and we've seen the difference. We've seen how quickly he closes distance, how he cuts angles.
He's become very good now. He's just become...
there's nothing to do about his speed. It is so good that, man, I would definitely want to see Biggie Boy again in the next 3 months, because he didn't get hit at all. He was coming off fresh.
I don't think he sweated. He didn't even drop a sweat. He looked good. He looked in shape, and I loved his attitude after the fight, though. He was all about it. He was always humble, and he was like, we're working on a couple of things and we're looking to make our way back up that mountain.
Right.
And the way he's going, he will, because he's a fast heavyweight, and heavyweights with power are a big, big plus. But he's at a bit of a weird position in the UFC right now, because he's a perennial top 5. Because you've got Francis Ngannou as the champion. You've got Stipe Miocic at number 2. You've got Alexander Volkov at number 3. You've got Cyril Gane at number 4. You've got Derek Lewis is also in the top 5.
Right.
Who's now fighting for the championship. And the thing is now, and Cyril Gane is fighting Alexander Volkov, Stipe Miocic is now, is coming out of a loss. Who's next for somebody like Biggie Boy, man? It's a tough division.
Well, it's quite interesting because his only 2 losses have been versus Cyril Gane and Francis Ngannou. which means he's beaten people like Junior Dos Santos, he's beaten Alistair Overeem, he's beaten Arlovsky. So, which probably puts him in that spot, maybe a rematch versus Gane, because I don't think he's going to be getting past beyond that.
No, man. But, no, not Gane. Not Gane. Gane is. I have a feeling Gane is being primed for that belt. If he goes ahead and wins, he's going to go get a title shot after. And unless John Jones decides to come back in and step in and fight.
That'll be very interesting because Cyril Gane and Francis Ngannou are from the same camp in France. And it's so interesting to see both of them beat this guy.
But the difference is you see Cyril Gane's technique, Cyril Gane's fighting style. He's such a light on his feet kickboxer. And the power that he snaps those kicks with, man, those kicks, his inside leg kicks can paralyze you. Those are devastating. And Cyril Gane, though, okay, but the entire top 5 are already pre-matched up. I think maybe a rematch with Curtis Blades, a match with Curtis Blades might be good for Jairzinho right now.
That's a beautiful. Yeah, I would love to see that. That's
a really, really good matchup. And that concludes our first segment, Somesh. We've got so much more to talk about.
Absolutely. In fact, that brings us to the end of this segment. We will see you right back after this short commercial break where we discuss the boxing happenings and how it's ruffled the feathers in the MMA world and a lot more after this quick short break. See you on the other side.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, C.E.T and Cred. We really appreciate the support. It is what makes this possible. So it was a fun week on Cider Says. We had guests like Dolly Singh, we had Guneet Monga, we had Kamya Jani of Curry Tales, and Cock and Bull as we always did. Do check it out. I think you'll really, really enjoy that. On Paisa Vaisa, we crossed 300 episodes and Anupam was joined by Akhil Handa, the digital head of Bank of Baroda. All Things Policy discussed topics like the 100 years of China's Communist Party, the Facebook versus the Government of India case, and the evolution of Indian science. On the Wire Talk, Siddharth Bhatia was joined by Gautam Bhatia to discuss the Central Vista project and why it's attracting so much flack. Sadaf and Archit are back on the Non-Curry podcast, and this time they raise the temperatures as they discuss the beloved spice mirchi. On the Millennial Athlete, this week Tanvi and Shlok speak to Sarita Chauri, a visually impaired judoist. And finally, I want to ask you all to give a listen to the Triangle Offense. Anybody who has heard me talk on a podcast knows I can't shut up about basketball, and these guys know more about it than I do. So if you enjoy basketball, do check this out. Nishant and Monish do an excellent job with this show. I was one of their guests a few months ago, which is how I met them and tried to convince them to come onto the network, and they're finally here. So definitely do check this out. Show's available on all major podcasting platforms, but they also have a daily YouTube episode, which is available on the IVM Podcast channel. And with that, let me get you back to your show.
Welcome back to the Fighting G.O.A.T. We are live from the IVM studios. I wish, in a couple of weeks, hopefully, we'll be
live
right
from the
back.
IVM studio. I wish. I love that.
We always talk about it. I'm waiting to get back in the studio.
You just want to have a beer. That's it.
I just want to sit down and have a beer. It's Monday, but unfortunately, this week is a rough week. It's a tough week for me, so no drinking.
Because I'm moving into a new 14,000 square feet apartment, right?
Shut up. Yeah, that's also there. Don't worry, nobody. The next show will be from a different mahal. But speaking of mahols, man, it's been a weird 24 hours. It's been a really, really weird 24 hours. And I would say it's been a weird 10 days ever since the heavy promotions for Mayweather versus Logan Paul started happening. We saw more and more fighters, and especially guys like Jake Paul going on camera and saying that MMA fighters are criminally underpaid.
Right.
And it's such a topic where, people are contesting both sides of it, saying that, boxing is this, boxing is that, boxing is the dying sport, blah, blah. But at the same time, I do understand that sponsorships and numbers and figures are structured differently. But do you feel somewhere that fighters like Paulo Costa, Francis Ngannou and John Jones have a point somewhere?
Well, see, there are always two sides of the coin. Now, correct. The fighter would obviously see a YouTuber who's getting paid 20 million for an exhibition fight, where there are no judges, no referees. It's not going to taint his record, which doesn't exist, etc., etc. So it's going to be about money. But at the same time, if you see the business model, it is completely different because the UFC produces their own events. They have the camera crew, they have the stadiums, they have the broadcasting. But in boxing, everything is outsourced. So you just get two stars together, you get a good sponsor, everything else is outsourced. So I just think the business model matters. I personally am not a big fan of these exhibition matches because I think eventually the sport will die a slow death. But having said that, if you're looking for a good payday, I think boxing is a good option for you, especially after Ben Askren got knocked out. He was so happy and walking around the stadium and all of that. And he was like, I've not made so much money in the last 10 years of my MMA career.
See, that's what I talk about. That's the thing that I was alluding to, It's easy when you're looking from the outside. I wanted everybody to understand one thing when people on Twitter were saying like, oh, these guys are getting paid in the millions and MMA fighters barely get 500K a fight. And that's only if you're already an established fighter. People need to keep in mind that as a boxer, if you're not a big name fighting a big name, you are not going to make that money either. You think the guys on the undercard and anything but the co-main or main event have made that kind of money? No, they've not. They've not made that kind of money. But I would say honestly, sincerely, see, the thing is that UFC is still the best paymaster in the market in MMA. You are not in. Why does everybody aspire to get to the UFC to fight? Because not only, even an undercard fighter makes more in the UFC than most other organization regular fighters.
Right.
And that's the reality of it. And even the same thing in boxing. Unless you're fighting Canelo Alvarez, there's no way you're making 20 million. You're no way. Billy Joe Saunders made probably lesser than Logan Paul on that night to face Canelo. But here's the thing. So it's funny. Yes, I don't blame a lot of marquee fighters like Francis Ngannou or John Jones or GSP or Anderson Silva who have done their bit in MMA. Not Ngannou. Ngannou has just become a champion. But one can't help but think that perhaps, do you think there could be a model in the future where that would allow fighters to, hop in between boxing and MMA? Because, like a lot of people on Twitter said about Paulo Costa, saying that, Costa shouldn't complain. Why don't, if he really wants to get paid and he wants to get into boxing, he has 2 fights remaining on his contract. Finish out the contract and go do what you want. Yeah.
And, to be honest, most of these athletes who really look at the bigger picture are looking at someone who has, fought for like 20 years and maybe fights once in like 3 or 4 years, So, but in the UFC, what happens? There are fights every week. Exactly. There are so many opportunities. It's like comparing a Bollywood actor getting paid X amount versus a Hollywood actor getting paid amount. So it's more like, both are doing the same jobs in separate countries, but one gets paid 15-20 million, one gets paid 15% of that.
So, unless you're Shah Rukh Khan, who gets paid 15% more than anybody else ever.
Exactly.
or Salman Bhai.
Yeah. But, but the thing is that if you think that gets you more money, just shift. Just, tell the UFC, I don't want to complete my contract and I want to go. Like, just release me. So I don't think there's anything wrong in that, but they know they're not going to succeed in boxing because that's a whole new ball game. And I personally think these guys cannot fight once in 3-4 years and still expect that payday. That comes with very few elite athletes.
See, that's the thing. If people are looking at these exhibition matches with Jake Paul and Logan Paul, which according to me are an absolute circus.
Yeah.
And they're looking at that and just, they're thinking of social media engagement money that will come out of it.
Exactly.
They're not looking at it as the sports. You think Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua at heavyweight will be good? No. Anthony Joshua has got some sick hands. You think Tyson Fury will not be able to fight? That's what I'm talking about. The minute you start getting to the pro level of boxing, where you really want to get to, yes, you'll make more money, but damn, it's also far more dangerous. The amount of deaths that have happened because of boxing, because of blunt trauma to the head constantly. And MMA is when you're rocked, a referee can jump and stop it. But boxing has a 10 count when you're dropped. You're made to stand up. In MMA, it's so much safer.
Well,
so much
absolutely
safer.
Yes, absolutely yes. And and in fact, if I can just ask the viewers, how many opportunities are there in boxing? One. Yes. Second is that how many big stars are there in boxing? There are hardly 3 or 4.
We can count. Okay, let's see. We can count. Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz Jr., Deontay Wilder.
That's not heavyweight. Even Ruiz Jr. Like
Canelo, Saul Canelo, Amir Khan, Billy Joe Saunders.
Triple G, maybe.
Golovkin, for sure, but used to be. Klitschko brothers, Andy Garcia, new young kid in the lighter weight divisions.
Well, honestly, but Andy Garcia doesn't even get paid that much, to be honest.
That's not even 15 names I've taken. I'm sure there are a lot more, but they're all contenders climbing the ranks.
Correct.
So whoever's looking at it from the other side, thinking the grass is greener, yeah, the grass might be greener if you're fighting a Logan Paul. Sure, because it's going to be a silly fight.
Right.
But the minute you want to make a step into boxing, you got to train boxing all over again.
Yeah, very true. I mean, I just think people are looking at these huge numbers and kind of, sympathizing with their own situation. But honestly, I don't think it's something to be looked at. I would highly recommend people focus on their sport, trying to make a mark and trying to make money in your line of business, and just go there and do your job. Because honestly, the UFC is right now, it's an organization that could even take advantage, but I know because I work with them. So they're not somebody who will take advantage. You can negotiate your contracts. And honestly, if you're putting up a show and people are coming to see you, why not? Like, honestly, there are so many fighters better than Conor, but why does Conor make that money?
Man, Conor makes that money because he's Conor McGregor.
Because he puts up a show.
His show, his saleability, his personality, his going after. One thing Conor taught everybody in this business was how to make money. And he's laid out the blueprint. Go be interesting. Go be amazing. Go make your voice heard. Market yourself. Market the fight. It's somebody told me this a long time ago. It doesn't matter what business you're in. You're always in sales. You are always selling yourself, no matter who you are. And guys and we've seen a small trend. Guys have started talking more. Guys are calling each other out. Guys have started marketing themselves better. Like guys like Santiago Ponzinibbio, who is a super stud, who always brings it. I guarantee you Dana White would pay him what he wants to stay. Keep him there.
Right.
Guarantee. Right. And yes, there might be a disparity between that and boxing, but one has to realize that the disparity between Mayweather versus anybody will be there. You're never going to get paid.
Always.
You're never going to get paid like a Mayweather. You're never going to get paid like a Saul Canelo Alvarez.
Right.
You're never going to get paid that way. So it's, the grass is greener syndrome is there, but there can be an argument made, Somesh, somewhere that maybe a lot of fighters also have said this in the past, that maybe MMA payments could go up, the base pay could go up. It's like the simple argument that somebody else also made was that, I said this, that you might not get 20 million for that fight, but I guarantee you won't get 15K either. You know what I mean?
Well, see, my view is a little different on this front because, so when it comes to mixed martial arts, be it one championship or be it the UFC or be it Bellator or Invicta, you can actually pick up the phone and call up the matchmaker and say, listen, I think I have a prospect. They are debut guys. And can you have a look at them? And there's a good chance that maybe if you have a good relation and whether you have got good fighters with you, they could get picked. Boxing is very complex. You can't just pick up someone and say, listen, I want to fight on this HBO card. It's not the way the business works.
That's true, because in boxing, it's very weird. The contender system, we were supposed to see Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua. But the thing is that entire thing was called up because Anthony Joshua has to fight the number one contender, the person who is fighting for his belt. He has to take on his next contender. He can't go out and choose who he wants.
And
maybe after this he can ask for it. But he has to face the contender. That's why you saw, like today, people say Saul Alvarez is the greatest in the super middleweight division. He is the best super middleweight. He has all the titles under his belt. He's got the magazine belts. He's got the WBC, WBA, WBO, all the belts he's got.
All of them
under his belt. But he still can't pick and choose who he wants to fight.
Exactly. And there was an international court that said, listen, I'm sorry, but the rule says you have to fight the number one contender. And that's exactly what he has to do. So, man, that's Deontay Wilder again for him.
That's Deontay again for that's the reality of the situation. So, I just think that, the fact that the issue has been brought up now internationally, like I think if a lot of fighters have started talking about the disparity in pay, I think we might be, we've heard so many rumors in the past of, MMA getting unionized. But with unionization comes its own problems. It comes with its own corruption. It comes with its own issues. And that's what happened to boxing. There was a huge downfall in boxing because of that. Because of those things.
Yes. So, but see, what? The timing has been so perfect, to be honest, Chips, that UFC is now a publicly listed and a publicly traded company, which means they might be able to even up the payment.
I'm sure they will.
And at the same time, this issue of payment structure has come in, where John Jones has said, listen, 8 million for a title fight versus Francis Ngannou is just not good for me. But do you think 8 million is less money?
Look, man, like
$8 million?
You can't compare everything to
like for a 31-year-old.
Dude, he already made $1 million after his title fight against Shogun. And he was 20 and he crashed his Bentley at that point.
Yeah.
And so, that's
just what you did, yeah.
Just same. Only my difference was a Splendor and it was crashed into a pole. That's the only difference. So not exactly the party lifestyle. but I understand what you're saying. Yes, in that relation, yes. But I can also understand it from a perspective of a John Jones, and a John Jones only because he's defended his belt for I don't know how many goddamn times. He's been a champion for a long time. He's never been defeated.
Right.
So maybe somebody like that could have some shot calling power.
But see, I completely agree with you. I, in fact, understand the point. But how much money is less money? How much money is sufficient
now
money?
Now we are going into a whole different conversation.
I'm just beginning to wonder because, the moment John Jones said that listen, 8 million is too less to fight the champion, it was the black beast Derek Lewis that immediately said, listen, if it's 8 million, I'm in.
But believe me, after they found out what Logan Paul made for the fight, they'll all start saying, nahi, 8 million, nahi. Make it 20, match the pay. See, it's never ending. It's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. It's always going to be a slippery slope. But I trust the UFC to do what they do right, and which is how they keep their fighters happy. They know how to do this.
Right.
They know how to deal with this shit. And I'm sure their personal contracts after they become champions change. I'm sure.
Yes.
The pay structures change. Everything changes. The sponsorships change. Everything. So, but one thing that I didn't agree with the UFC was that they got rid of all the sponsorships. Where I remember guys like Cowboy Cerrone would make 150K extra just on sponsorships.
Right.
So it's a long, it's a topic that can't be finished in one go. But you know what, Somesh? We've got something big coming up in the MMA universe.
Oh, yes.
We've got UFC 263, baby.
But that's going to happen after this short break. We will be back on the other side with our predictions and our pre-fight analysis of UFC 263. See you guys on the other side.
Come learn and experience the ABCDs of being queer with me, Shunetro,
and me, Farhad,
on our show Gay BCD.
The two of us take you through our stories and experiences of being gay men in the city of Mumbai and have candid
and sometimes downright scandalous
conversations about sexuality, gay culture, and everything in between.
Catch new episodes of Gay BCD every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get all your podcasts from.
Welcome back to our final segment where we talk about how Team Chips has been kicking Team Kamra's ass.
Not at
for
all.
a long time.
Titus is on my side.
Excuse me, hang on. What do you think 5-1 is still, yaar? I mean, kya? I mean, mazak hai. I mean, it's still, chalo. You by no means can you be cocky here. If it was like 3-2 or 5-4 or whatever, I get it. No. It would bahut dur hai. But you never know, man. Maybe I've tooted my horn too much and I'm going to be on a losing slide now. Who knows? But we're coming to one of the biggest cards. Well, this year has already had so many great cards.
Man,
but I would say one of the biggest cards of the summer.
So good to see fans back.
Oh, so good. And I think it's taking place. UFC 263 takes place in Arizona, where it's going to be filling up a whole stadium this time. I think, 20,000 odd people, Somesh?
Yep. I think about 20,000 people.
And we've got a top to bottom stacked card. We've got Bilal Muhammad taking on Damian Maia. We've got Nate Diaz taking on Leon Edwards in a 5-round war. We've got Israel Adesanya taking on Marvin Vettori, baby.
And we have Figueiredo taking on Brandon Moreno for the flyweight championship in the co-main event. So, the
rematch.
Chips, this card starts with Paul Craig and Jamiah Hill in the light heavyweight division. Moves on to, as you rightly said, Bilal Muhammad and Damian Maia in the welterweight division for the first time ever. it's going to be a 5-round non-title or a main event between Leon
that's strange.
Edwards.
I think that's strange. I think
in fact, they had signed the contract for 5 rounds
Achha,
for a co-main event. For the first time ever. A non-title fight, co-main event, they wanted to do 5 rounds. I think UFC are trying to bend the rules a little bit here.
Dude, they can do what they want.
Exactly.
It's their company.
And then we move on to the flyweight division between Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno in the rematch. The first one was crazy.
Dude, that rematch is, firstly, rule number 1 of all rematches. No rematch goes the same way. Ever. No rematch goes the same way. I cannot rate
except if John Jones. Except if John Jones.
Who has John Jones rematched?
DC,
Daniel
right?
Cormier. But
DC.
But that is not even a rematch. It's like, okay, this time it was a draw between Moreno and Figueiredo, so there's a rematch. DC lost the first one, and then DC figuratively lost the second.
Oh, yes.
Like, it was a stamp on it. But we've seen great rematches in the past. Remember Shogun Machida too?
Oh man,
what did Shogun do, man? First fight was
DC Stipe. Oh man,
DC Stipe, the rematch. He came back and he knocked out DC.
Man, that was beautiful.
And Shogun knocked out Machida.
Oh god.
Oh, hang on, Rampage Jackson versus
and
Chuck
Silva.
Liddell.
Oh yeah. Oh god.
Rampage Jackson, Chuck Liddell.
Holy shit, I'm sweating.
Rampage Jackson, Tito Shamrock. That was a repeat.
God. My God. You know what?
Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen too.
We can just have an entire episode only on rematches.
We should actually. I think, a lot of fans tell us that we must talk about the Pride era. And so, guys, don't worry. Soon enough, we're going to be doing a whole special episode on the Pride era, where we're going to be taking fan questions and answering them. So that's going to be a fun episode. We're going to let you know when that's coming. I promise.
But even though
we are in the Pride months.
Let's get back to UFC 263. Chips, we've got 5 banging fights, but what I would like to pick are 3 of them, if you don't mind. One is Leon Edwards, Nate Diaz. We'll go on to the co-main event, Figueiredo versus Moreno. And obviously the main event of the evening, where Israel Adesanya takes on the Italian stallion, Marvin Vittori.
The Italian Dream.
Oh, he's called the Italian Dream or the Italian Stallion?
No, not the Stallion. The Stallion is only Rocky Marciano.
Right. You're right.
Italian Dream. The Italian Dream, will it be the Italian Nightmare? Nobody knows. But as Israel Adesanya said on the, man, you saw the trash talk. He's saying, I'm going to end the Italian job in 1 round. And I'm like, I mean, Izzy and his trash talk, man. It's always entertaining.
And he's so smooth, man. He's so smooth.
I mean, it's going to be, it's so funny. They talk about the first match and they talk about how much of a war it was. Yeah. And I went and saw that fight, and there were moments where Marvin Vittori had the pressure on him. Yeah. But we've seen Israel Adesanya when he's focused and he has a point to prove.
Oh, man.
We've seen what he does. And the way he talks about it, the look in his eyes, he says, this is my division. And I'm undefeated, and I'm going to remain undefeated in this division. And let's start. Let's just start predicting now. Let's go.
Oof. Okay, let's go.
It's Mystic Time.
It's in the welterweight division. Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. It's in the 170-pound division. These 2 warriors are going to go 5 rounds. So, Chips, what is your prediction for this one?
Nate Diaz has all the cardio in the world. Leon Edwards is a stud of a fighter. He's one of those diamonds which have not gotten his chance to shine yet. But tonight he gets. I think there's a reason why it's 5 rounds. It has full title implications. After this, probably gets the number 1 contender. My heart is saying Nate Diaz, but my mind is saying 5-round decision win from Leon Edwards.
Very, very sadly, I'm going to be in the same boat because I want to say Nate Diaz, but because I'm 5-1 down versus Chips, I'm going to go practically. And if you ask me, as someone who's going to be practical, and if I had to put money on this, I would say Leon Edwards. I would not say how it ends, but I would say Leon Edwards takes this one.
I mean, finishing Nate Diaz is almost impossible.
I don't mind losing this.
Yeah, seriously. If we both get this fight wrong, I don't care because I'm a big Nate Diaz fan.
You know what? Actually, Forget it. I'm paying Nate Diaz. Let's go.
Okay, chalo.
So I'm going for Nate Diaz, and Team Chips.
I also feel like even I want to go for Nate Diaz, man.
No.
I want to go for Nate Diaz, dude. I also want to live dangerously.
Then I'll go for Leon Edwards.
Okay, you're just doing this to win. I know you want to win. That's all. You want.
One of us has to win. So
I'm going to go with Leon. I think he manages to get it done.
So I think Leon is going to win, but I'm too much of a Nate Diaz fan, so I'm just kind of.
My God, I would love to see an upset from
God.
Nate. Man, I would love to see it upset. Okay, but next fight, come on, the rematch,
You know
champion.
What? Actually, let me. I like my final decision is Leon Edwards.
Okay, chalo, TK, you're on Team Chips.
Yeah.
Leon Edwards. Okay, so next fight, we've got the champ, Davison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. The first fight was a draw. What's going to happen in the second?
Oh, man. These are so difficult. And I love Moreno.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with Figueiredo.
I love Moreno. He's such a sweet-looking guy. He's a baby-faced assassin.
Yeah.
That man will whoop your ass. And he comes with that Mexican blood, the never die spirit, the willpower that man has, and the amount of punishment he can take. Figueiredo is easily 170 pounds on Fight Night.
Easily, yeah.
He's not 170, but he's at least 155. He's at least 155. I want to see a weighing scale. Sorry. Once the fight starts, you just stand on the weighing scale 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. I want to see how much you weigh. But I think I might agree with you here. I think the champ Figueiredo puts a stamp on it this time. He's not going to take any chances.
Yep. So Team Chips, Team Kamra on the same boat yet again. They are voting for the champion, and he still stays as the undefeated flyweight of the world. Moving on to the middleweight division. Israel Adesanya versus the Italian. What was it?
Italian Dream.
The Italian Dream, Marvin Vettori.
At least you didn't say Daniel Vettori, as our buddy Sudhi Sajdev at the Ultimate Guide to UFC. And now up next is Daniel Vettori. I'm like, you mean the chashma wearing left-hand spinner? I'm like, what is he doing in the UFC?
Well, the former New Zealand captain has shifted fields and he's a southpaw fighting for the championship. Okay, you know what? Middleweight, 185 pounds. The belt is with the New Zealand Nigerian, Israel Adesanya. And standing opposite him for a 5-round battle is going to be the Italian Dream, Marvin Vettori. Team Chips.
Even though my allegiance is I love Italy, I've lived there, I have a lot of love for the country, but I'm going with the champion. Israel Adesanya is one of the toughest fighters you will ever face. I met him. I've never seen that kind of determination in a man's eyes. He's got the experience. He's been under the lights. He's been under the big fights. And, and Somesh, you know this, the kind of nerves and adrenaline dumps that can happen in a championship fight, especially if it's your first championship fight. So I'm going with the champion who will retain his belt.
Well, I'm going to go a little deeper into this. I think it's going to be Israel Adesanya, round 2 TKO.
I have the same thing. I'm around round 2, round 3 TKOs only. He's going to end it. I know he's going to end it.
Yeah.
He's going to catch him coming in somehow.
It's a very mean thing to say on a very reputed podcast, but I feel Marvin Vettori has been bumped up because Robert Whittaker has said no to this fight.
Yes.
And they wanted to put somebody in front of Israel, and Marvin Vettori was game for this because he has lost to Israel Adesanya. This is a sort of a rematch.
Yeah.
I somehow didn't see that fire in the conversation that they had with Bisping. And I still felt he was not his original self. I'm talking about Marvin Vettori. Izzy was way too comfortable and he knew it's a so-called easy fight for him. So easy.
I hope
easy fight for him.
I hope he doesn't think that though. Because Marvin will bring the heat. I guarantee Marvin will bring the heat.
Absolutely. But that kind of movement is very, very difficult to catch. Marvin Vettori is a stocky guy who moves in a particular direction.
Correct. Izzy, you just see Izzy moving. The minute he moves stances, his attacks vary so smoothly from the stance shifts. Being such a decorated kickboxer, he knows how to play with range. He knows how to use those long limbs of his. He knows how to... what he did to Paulo Costa. Paulo had dead leg by the end of the first minute.
Man,
he kicked those legs so much. They were marked up and down. And he's fast.
I think it's just too much for Vettori to handle at the moment. The fight that I would like to see is a rematch with Robert Whittaker. But now what we have with us is Israel Adesanya taking on Marvin Vettori. Team Chips, Team Kamra both have gone for the same gentleman. That is the champion Israel Adesanya. And he still remains the world champion of the world.
World champion of the world.
Did I just say that?
Yes, you said world champion of the world.
Okay, fine. What's that part?
It's okay. So guys, the picks have been done. So write in to us, talk to us, message us, catch us on our profiles on all our social media platforms and tell us if you agree with us. If you don't agree with us, don't agree with us. But either way,
we don't care.
Heard. Let us know. And we really don't care. If you agree with it, don't agree also don't. Don't say that, यार. वैसे ही लोग सुनना कम हो जाएगा हमारा. ये लोग कोई respect नहीं देते साले कभी ने. No, all right. Don't forget what Mr. Kamra said. Please, either way, whether you agree or disagree, write into us. Let us know what you think.
Yes, and get a chance to win some exciting prizes.
Oh, yes.
Make your predictions. Hashtag us. Tag us on all social media platforms.
Hashtag Team Chips or Team Kamra. Remember, Team Chips mostly.
Team Chips or Team Kamra on IVM Podcast, or go on our personal handles, make your predictions, and again, get a chance to win some exciting prizes.
Absolutely. If you want to catch me, it's Arjun_Chipalkatti on Instagram. And on Twitter, it's at Mystic Chipal. Go, Somesh.
Well, for me, it is Somesh.Kamra on Instagram and Somesh_Kamra on Twitter. It's as simple as that. Guys, tune in, watch us, take a look at more shows on ivmpodcast.com. Until then, we will see you next week, same time, same place, only on the Fighting G.O.A.T.
Namaskar, dear friends. My name is Ashish Vidyarthi. Life, as you know, is a journey. And you and I, travelers, how can we celebrate this travel? I have a podcast for you. Begin the journey. I share stories and moments from my life. Do tune in every Monday and Thursday to listen to my podcast on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from. Cheers.
Feeling overwhelmed, anxious, struggling with too many obstacles, don't know where your life is headed? Well, if you are dealing with one or all of these, tune into the Positively Unlimited podcast, because in each episode, I share a life lesson, a life hack, a pro tip that can help you get your life back on track. All episodes are available on the IBM website, IBM Podcast app, or wherever it is that you get your podcast from.